Hello, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, hello. In the live broadcast of your favorite program, 60 Minutes, we start with urgent and extremely important news. So Putin instructed the general staff to conduct an exercise in the near future to practice the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons. As confirmed by the military, the exercise will be aimed at defending the sovereignty of the Russian Federation in response to irresponsible, provocative statements. The collective West will definitely return to this topic today, and there will be new details and urgent news again. Kyiv militants have launched another massacre against civilians near the village of Berezovka in the Belgorod region. As the governor clarified, 2 passenger Gazelles successfully hacked into 4 Ukrainian kamikaze drones, drove along the road to transport company employees, robbed Igor of work, and a passing car was hit. According to the latest figures, 7 people have died. 35 people were injured to varying degrees, including 2 children with superficial injuries. Now on the front line in the direction of Andreevsky, the Russian army continues to develop operational success north of the settlement after the liberation of Ocheretyanaya. The day before, the assault detachment of the 132nd Brigade entered the eastern region completely, but entered Alexandrov and took control of Arkhangelsk. The footage of the boys on your screen fleeing and retreating to the Sos is covered by Russian artillery. Those who covered the retreat to Vista, such as the group on the American P-113, were destroyed by our advanced troops. At the same time, our soldiers did not encounter strong resistance to the court and expanded the control area to the south and west of Okretyanoye in the direction of Sokol and Novopokrovskoye settlements, and also expanded the control area outside Tailova. Good news came from the direction of Mariinsky. In these videos, Russian army soldiers raise the country's flag. Above the Krasnogorsk refractory plant, which is a key defensive point of the Ukrainian armed forces, the rest of Krasnogorsk and the private sector are mainly. This means that the fate of the city is a foregone conclusion, and Krasnogorsk will be completely controlled by Russian troops in the direction of Kharkiv in the next few days. Russian soldiers declared complete liberation against the backdrop of the Russian flag. The Kotlярevsky unit of the 47th Tank Division knocked down the altitude and occupied the village. That is to say, the exit of the Zugev-Starobelskaya-Milovo highway to Kupinsky is almost completely formalized, and the battle for crops continues at the DPR border in the Zaporizhzhia region. There are also reports of hard-working people fleeing to CU, but the main battle in the Yar hours is like this. The Ukrainian armed forces position in the city now looks like this, so 24/7 artillery aviation, MLRS is working, breaking through the way. Assault unit. The main battle is on the flank of the hourly rage. The army is trying to advance to capture the city of high-rise Tix. The day before, the last supply artery on the left bank of the bridge between Chasovyar and the micro-district was cut off. The channel for importing heavy weapons for defense is no longer there. Your emergency attempt to build a mound won't help. After Boyara fell an hour, disaster awaited the height. Much more critical than after Avdiivka. In fact, the Russian army will open a direct road to the last major cities of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, occupied by Ukraine, as well as Slavyanskaya and Kramatorsk, and the French propagandist France 2, who visited the Ukrainian armed forces positions in the city, were inevitably convinced that the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces would fall. 6. The trivial Abrams American technical miracle was first defeated by the adjusted red field with artillery ammunition, and then the drone was added to the aircraft. The crew apparently turned to the side and fled. American Bradley came to Petrenko, but it would have been destroyed by a precise shot by the wandering Lancet, so we are waiting for the replenishment of the exhibits at the Poklonaya Gora exhibition in Moscow, where samples of Western equipment seized from SO will be displayed for a whole month. At present, 32 types of PT armored vehicle tanks have been exhibited. In addition, it is pointed out that for the employees of NATO embassies, the long queue at the Victory Park site was restored, including Abrams of the United States and Leopard of Germany, who had to deliberately bend their muzzles so that they could not look up, but to the ground. Other exhibits include the Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle, the BTM-113, an armored vehicle, the Max Pro British armored vehicle, the Mastiff and the Turkish armored vehicle Kirby. Samples of Ukrainian armored vehicles T-72, T-64, and Kozak armored vehicles are also displayed. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO rejected the exhibition of Western trophy equipment at Moscow's Poklonnaya Gora and did not recognize its existence. The likely reason for this stupid action, at least, is that the alliance simply cannot or does not want to believe that NATO has been superior for decades. Просто не могут или не хотят поверить, что десятилетиями превозносимое в своих преимуществах над ржавым... The rusty Russian iron of those who now find themselves as a mutilated trophy. The Moscow NATO equipment exhibition has troubled Western media. The Washington Post wrote that the Poklonnaya Gora exhibition reflects Russia's growing optimism that the war in Ukraine is being resolved in its favor. We are still a leopard sample of another Western scrap metal. Zelensky believes that its invincibility is a legend on Poklonnaya Gora, and tens of thousands of people are gathering in Ukraine. A new set of tank crews, artillery calculations, operators, air defense systems are in full swing. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has expanded the list of people who can be mobilized despite illness. People with dementia, ecology, cured tuberculosis, HIV, and other serious diseases can now call for war with Russia. In 1978, the comedy Uncle Adolf, nicknamed Führer Adriano Celentano, was filmed in Italy. Remember, in general, 46 years later, Italian comedies in Ukraine are considered documentaries. In these videos, Odessa military commissar uses a chevron in which the Nazi symbol is forced to push a man onto Luda Lobov's bus. Even if the man screams unattended children all over the street at his home, he is not embarrassed. Ukraine's new measures on the wild earth are reminiscent of increasingly unauthorized. Petrovsk residents were arraigned and subpoenaed for TikTok video. The man posted 10 episodes of the work of the military commissar on his page. The prosecutor's office believes that this is a release of data on the movement of the Ukrainian armed forces, and the mobile phone has been taken away. As it was clarified, in favor of the state, several military commissars and Kalashnikov overlooked the appellants in front of the church where they came to serve. A large number of people. The embroidered Zeus spoke against the backdrop of Hagia Sophia in Kiev, and a sect who was severely repelled said God was watching the herringbone with the Ukrainian flag. But why bother with your blasphemy? Immediately say he has an LGBT flag or a flag with a swastika on his shoulder. Why is Ukraine still fighting there? However, even in the madness of Ukraine, there are exceptions. In the Transcarpathian city of Vinogradov, a group of angry gypsies began to resist violent mobilization attempts. When it turned out that their compatriots were mobilizing, the rebels broke down the windows and doors and demanded the release of their friends. Security forces eventually opened fire in the air to calm the rioters. Criminal cases were filed against the Roma, who in turn accused the military commissar of kidnapping. You told NATO the conditions under which coalition forces would go to direct war with Russia in Ukraine. The Italian version of the Republic quoted sources in the leadership of Western military blocs as saying that NATO command has set a red line for itself, and its transition will involve direct intervention by the alliance in the war, especially force. The red line is related to the possibility of Russian troops breaking through Kiev's defense line and directly or even indirectly participating in the three-party war, mainly referring to Belarus. Another red line, according to the newspaper, implies that Russia may intervene directly in military provocations against the Baltic states or Poland, as well as targeted attacks on Moldova in conflict Ukraine. In any case, Hakeem Jumper, the Democratic minority leader in the U.S. Congress, said in an interview with Jeffrey's TV channel that military aid to Ukraine may not be enough to save Ukraine soon. Заявил, что скоро военной помощи Украине может оказаться недостаточно и спасать незалежную от краха придется... American soldiers will have to suffer from collapse. In an interview with the Podium, Emmanuel Macron said that Russia's victory in Ukraine would mean a loss of security for the whole of Europe, so he came up with the idea of sending a French army to Ukraine. Macron did not refuse. The French president once again said that he would not rule out sending ground troops to Ukraine, and also announced two conditions for this. One is that Russian troops break through the front line. After Kiev's appeal, the French army is possible. According to the latest news from the front line, Russia's breakthrough is taking place now. Now, Emmanuel Macron's loyal ally, Robert Minant, the mayor of the French city of Aube, has bluntly said that Europe is worth defending and the French are afraid to fight Russia alone. Therefore, Macron called on other Western countries not to abandon the option of sending contingents to Ukraine, like as early as the summer, 22 Western countries ruled out sending long-range aerial missile tanks, but now all of them are delivered in Ukraine. Russia has never launched a single attack on NATO bases. In Europe, however, he understands that everything can change very quickly, hence the backlash to Macron's words. If she says so briefly, Monsieur, fight yourself, Britain, Slovakia, Hungary, Germany, Italy, the Czech Republic and Sweden have announced their refusal to send troops to Ukraine to fight Russia. There was no agreement to send a NATO contingent. The fact is that most of Ukraine's Western allies are worried about the threat of nuclear war in the event of a direct conflict between NATO and Russia. And rightly so. Xi Jinping visited Europe for the first time in 5 years to discuss with leaders the attractiveness of economic cooperation with China, not with Sheish. According to Bloomberg, Comrade intends to create a wedge between Europe and the United States. The day before, arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Everything was met by French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. All statements said that during the visit, he will discuss bilateral relations and major regional and international issues with Macron. In other words, he will explain to Macron that the idea of sending foreign troops to Ukraine is, to put it mildly, unsuccessful. However, according to a statement from Macron's office, the main topic of the meeting will be Ukraine. Bloomberg sources wrote that Macron will persuade Chinese leaders to use leverage to pressure Moscow to force Putin to end the conflict in Ukraine. However, even Bloomberg experts pointed out that Beijing will not change its position on Ukraine, and Putin's planned visit to China in May confirmed the strength of Russia-China relations. In addition, Western analysts believe that Xi will not be a messenger to the Europeans, but will convey a message from Moscow to them. From Paris, Axis will fly to Hungary and Serbia. The visit to Belgrade coincides with the 25th anniversary of NATO's bombing of the Chinese embassy, but before and after Blinka's European tour of Syria and his visit to China, NATO and the United States have responded to the Chinese world. The United States is the #1 war instigator in the world. After World War II, the United States launched 80% of the wars. The United States participated in more than 50 coups. 30 interfered in elections in other countries, trying to kill more than 50 heads of foreign powers, NATO and the SH, and those responsible for the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, which killed nearly 1 million civilians. And 37 million refugees. Finally, as long as the hegemony of the United States continues, the world will not be restless. In response to this statement, the U.S. State Department announced that 20 Chinese companies will be sanctioned by the United States for supporting Russia at the same time. On your screens, a map of students' anti-Israel Palestinian protests in the United States is marked in orange by educational institutions, where police screwed at least 2,300 students who have been detained on 49 campuses with SHA in the past 2 weeks. Particular attention was paid to arrests at Columbia and the University of California. They stirred up dozens of other campuses across the SH, but public schools in the South and Midwest before the Ivy League was established. Northeast America. Zaitseva advises Joe Biden's team it's time to sound the alarm. The wooded unpopular president's approval ratings will now fall among the progressive youth Democrats have always relied on. Not all students are ready to support Trump, but no one has canceled the protest vote. Senator Bernie Sanders drew a direct parallel. This could turn into a Vietnam for Biden, who risks losing not only the votes of young voters, but also the votes of traditional Democratic voters. Of course, the scale of the protests has not yet been the same, but the authorities are acting as they did at the time, using brutal force and arrests. Another precedent is that for the first time in history, Washington's unconditional support for Israel's actions has aroused serious public resistance. Inside the United States, I see a large number of arrests showing how quickly Palestinian camps and police retaliation have turned prestigious, expensive American universities into the country's hottest spots.